Hello, Wellspring. It is Thursday, May the 15th. We are continuing on with our reading. We have 2 more days in the book of Esther, Esther chapter 8 and Esther chapter 9. Um, we left off yesterday with Haman being impaled and Queen Esther pleading for her life and for the life of Mordecai, the king answering positively. And now we're going to find out what is going to happen for the Jews who, remember, this edict had been set out by Haman for them to be destroyed. And that still hasn't been completely resolved. And so we're going to pick up with Esther chapter 8 to find out what's going to happen in that space. I'm reading from the NIV today, so let's dig into the Word of God together. That same day, King Xerxes gave Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came into the presence of the king, for Esther had told how he was related to her. The king took off his signet ring, which he had reclaimed from Haman, and presented it to Mordecai, and Esther appointed him over Haman's estate. Esther again pleaded with the king. Falling at his feet and weeping, she begged him to put an end to the evil plan of Haman the Agagite, which he had devised against the Jews. Then the king extended the gold scepter to Esther, and she rose and stood before him. If it pleases the king, she said, and if he regards me with favor and thinks it is the right thing to do, and if he is pleased with me, let an order be written, overruling the dispatches that Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, devised and wrote to destroy the Jews in all the king's provinces. For how can I bear to see disaster fall on my people? How can I bear to see the destruction of my family? King Xerxes replied to Queen Esther and to Mordecai the Jew, because Haman attacked the Jews, I have given his estate to Esther, and they have impaled him on the pole he set up. Now write another decree in the king's name in behalf of the Jews, as seems best to you, and seal it with the king's signet ring. For no document written in the king's name and sealed with his ring can be revoked. At once, the royal secretaries were summoned on the 23rd day of the 3rd month, the month of Sivan. They wrote out all Mordecai's orders to the Jews and to the satraps, governors, and nobles of the 127 provinces stretching from India to Cush. These orders were written in the script of each province and the language of each people, and also to the Jews in their own script and language. Mordecai wrote in the name of King Xerxes, sealed the dispatches with the king's signet ring, and sent them by mounted couriers who rode fast horses, especially bred for the king. The king's edict granted the Jews in every city the right to assemble and protect themselves, to destroy, kill, and annihilate the armed men of any nationality or province who might attack them and their women and children, and to plunder the property of their enemies. The day appointed for the Jews to do this in all the provinces of King Xerxes was the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar. A copy of the text of the edict was to be issued as law in every province and made known to the people of every nationality, so that the Jews would be ready on that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. The couriers, riding the royal horses, went out, spurred on by the king's command, and the edict was issued in the citadel of Susa. When Mordecai left the king's presence, he was wearing royal robes of blue and white, a large crown of gold, and a purple robe of fine linen. And the city of Susa held a joyous celebration. For the Jews, it was a time of happiness and joy, gladness and honor. In every province and in every city to which the edict of the king came, there was joy and gladness among the Jews, with feasting and celebrating. And many people of other nationalities became Jews because fear of the Jews had seized them. So we see here the king basically says any edict that's gone out in my name can't be revoked. It can't be undone. So this order to see the Jews destroyed in all the provinces remains. But the king says, Mordecai, why don't you write another edict in my name and send it out to see what you can do to kind of undo this, to overcome it. And so Mordecai writes an edict signed by the king in the name of the king to say, if anyone rallies against the Jews, if anyone attacks the Jews, they have the right to avenge themselves, to fight back. And any of their enemies that they kill, they can plunder and take from their houses and take from their treasures and take their property, right? And become owners of it. So this counter edict is out there. So now we have the edict to destroy the Jews, and we have an edict that the Jews are allowed to defend themselves and to take whatever plunder they get from avenging themselves on those who would come and attack them. And so, in theory, what this does is kind of dissuade people from wanting to attack or kill the Jews, because there's a lot of them and they're all over the place. And so if we attack the Jews and kill them or fight them, they're allowed to fight back now. So we would have this combat where the Jews would be able to rise up and defend themselves and protect themselves. And if the Jews are victorious, they get to take all of your property, right? They get to take they get to plunder whoever would attack them. And so in this way, it kind of sets up this counterbalance that says, okay, there is this attack to kill the Jew, or to this edict to kill the Jews, but then there's this edict for the Jews to fight back or to defend themselves. And so it kind of dissuades people from wanting to do it. In fact, there's enough Jews and there's enough fear of the Jews because of what is happening in the province, because people are seeing God's hand at work protecting them, that many people convert and become Jews themselves in order to experience that kind of protection, and to be able to step into that edict where instead of attacking the Jews, they can defend themselves. And so people want that for themselves. They want the right to defend themselves, to protect themselves. And so many people convert. And this becomes a time of great prosperity and joy, even for the Jews who are in exile. Even though they are in a foreign country, they're spread out in these 127 provinces from India to Kush. They are experiencing a time of happiness, of honor, of peace and prosperity because of the edict that Mordecai writes in the name of King Xerxes. And so we see God's deliverance come to a further space of completion as Esther has continued to operate with incredible courage and trusting the Lord. God has shown mercy on her through King Xerxes, and they've overthrown Haman, who was the hateful, racist guy who had a vendetta, particularly against Mordecai, but against the Jews. And now the Jews are living in prosperity because God chose Esther for such a time as this to stand in courage and in boldness. And God used her and delivered her people. God can use you to deliver your family, to deliver yourself, to deliver your people from the hand of the enemy if you trust him and walk with integrity and walk with obedience towards him. Once again, God's name has not been mentioned. We haven't heard him talked about in this space. But we see him at work in the long game, in his providence, through the integrity and through the courage of his people being his hands and feet. So be the hands and feet of Jesus. Minister in love and in courage and in boldness, and see what God does in that space. God bless you, Wellspring. Have a great day. One more day in the book of Esther tomorrow. God bless you.